Hello everyone, DJ here. Let's move on with our series on disability retirement, shall we? And we've been covering a lot of ground these last few weeks, so we're almost at the end. For those of you who have endured this long, congratulations, or maybe I should say apologies, but we are almost done with this. So let's move on to the next topic. And I have a question that leads into this next topic. So let me just read that. So, DJ, I've been found medically unfit and I have ratings from the medical boards. There's just one thing though. I don't want to leave military service. Well, that's quite understandable. It is quite a habit-forming thing, we could say. We get used to wearing the uniform and performing duties as a service member. Well, there's some good news for you. Your career may not be over just yet. There are two programs which, and I emphasize might in this case, which might be available to you if you meet certain conditions. They are called, at least in the Army, Continuation on Active Duty, or COAD, and Continuation on Active Reserve, or COAR. Sometimes you'll hear COAD or COAR. Variations on that. I'll just say COAD and COAR. Heck, I might even slip into the other pronunciations just for simplicity. Who knows? But I would like to hear from those of you in other branches just to learn the different names for these programs as well as how they may differ from what I'm going to describe today. I'll be talking primarily from an Army perspective regarding this program, but this program does exist in all components, all branches. So keep that in mind for those of you who might meet the conditions I'm about to describe. So if you saw my video / audio episode entitled Interview with a Pedlo, then you have at least heard of these programs in passing. We didn't go into a lot of detail about them during that interview because I wanted to go into more detail here, and I thought it would have been a bit of a distraction at the time. So now that I think about it, I really should make a transcript of that interview and post it. I haven't done that yet, but that's something I can do in the future. Anyway, we're going to go much deeper into this topic of continuing service, what exactly it is, the purpose of these programs, how they work, etc. Essentially, the way these programs work or the purpose of them is essentially to reduce the military's loss of essential manpower and skills as a result of the people with those skills being found unfit for continued service. In other words, medical disqualification. Now, this obviously is not a program for everybody. I might throw out a particular occupational specialty as an example, but for those of you who hold those MOSs, please don't be offended. I'm just throwing out examples as a what if, but even for those particular skills, there is a chance that you could qualify for these programs as well. So let's move on. Now, like I said, this isn't something for everybody. In fact, for many people going through medical boards, it might not even be the best idea for them. This seems, from my experience, to be a program for people with relatively low disabilities, though I could be wrong there, or those with critical skill types, which is exactly what the eligibility requirements state. So you'll have to decide if these programs are right for you and whether or not to pursue them yourself. So remember, as with so many things, this is not an automatic program. You will have to apply for it, and your branch of service will have to approve that request once you've made the request and submitted a packet. So who can qualify for these programs? There's a particular subset of service members that do seem to apply pretty obviously. So that group of service members, though anyone can apply, are the following, and I'll just read that right off my notes here on the screen. So The most preferred subset of service members are those who have served 15 to 20 years of active duty service in the case of COAD, or 15 to 20 qualifying years of service for non-regular retirement in the case of COAR. Next requirement is qualified in a critical skill or shortage military occupational specialty, or MOS, and has a disability rating as a result of combat or terrorism. I took that right off the Warrior Care and Transition website. There's a link in the show description if you'd like to see other information about that. In fact, if you look at the article version of this topic, which is posted on Fridays, then you can see in writing a lot of the sources I use and reference them yourself. Moving on. So in order to be considered for COAD or COAR, you need to be able to work in a military environment without it creating undue stress on your current disabilities. If you're an enlisted member and you're approved for this program, you may have to extend your enlistment in order to meet the requirements of the program. Just keep that in mind. And if you're an officer, of course, your remaining service obligation will be adjusted as needed. So if you have a disability rating which increases during this period of service and reasonable accommodations cannot be made for that increase in your disabilities, and you're no longer able to perform your military duties, you could be allowed, in fact probably will, be allowed to apply for release from the COAD or COAR program. So when do you apply? How do you apply? Let's go into that. The first thing that needs to happen is that the IDES, Integrated Disability Evaluation System, or LDES, Legacy Disability Evaluation System, Medical Board, has to find you unfit for continued service and recommend separation or retirement. Next, you have to have at least 15 years, but less than 20, of qualifying service, be that reserve service or active duty. Well, AGRs and other active duty personnel, you would go, of course, under the active duty requirements. And we part-timers, we M-Day soldiers would go under the requirements for reservists. Of course, the critical skill applies here. You've got to have a reason for them to keep you. So being an 11 Bravo, an infantryman, might not be a qualifying factor, but you never know. Infantrymen can have a wide array of other skills in addition to pulling a trigger. So once you have those requirements, if you have met the qualification for combat or terrorism related injuries, which may or may not be a hard and fast rule, but it is preferred, then you can put together a packet to request being put on this continuation of active service program. And as far as the packet itself, everything I'm about to mention is going to be in the show notes, the description, etc. You'll have the ability to see everything I describe here. So now you're going to put this packet together. I recommend doing it with the assistance of your PEBLO, your Physical Evaluation Board Liaison Officer. They are experienced in this area and know the requirements and best ways to put it all together so that you have the best chance of being approved. This packet, though, has a time limit. You do have to put it all together and submit it to the Physical Evaluation Board within 10 days of them coming out with your disability rating and recommendation for separation. Now, fortunately, the packet is relatively simple and composed primarily of documents that are produced during this whole journey through IDES, so it's pretty easy to find them and put them all together. So for the Army, it will be, and the titles and whatnot will be different for each branch of service, obviously. But for the Army anyway, those documents are a continuation on active duty or active reserve checklist, a DA Form 4187, personnel action, and I've got examples of these posted in the show notes, a DA Form 7652, which is a commander's performance and functional statement. The other branches most likely have something quite similar to this. The Physical Evaluation Board proceedings. In the Army, that would be DA Form 199 and its sister forms, the 199-1 and 199-2, if you have them. For continuation on active reserve, you also need a retirement point statement showing how many qualifying years you have at the moment. Lastly, and this is really the only new thing that you have to generate, is a memorandum from the treating physician, normally the one that evaluated you while going through IDES. A statement from that physician outlining your current disabilities and your ability to continue to serve. That's going to be critical. So in the Army anyway, this packet is then, once it's complete, sent to the Army Physical Disability Agency, and they will be the ones who consider it and determine whether or not to keep you in active service. Now, for those of you in the reserve components, when I say active service, I don't mean active duty. I mean continuing to drill, just like you would otherwise. This is not putting you on an active duty status. Now, that's pretty quick, and even though it's only almost 12 minutes into this, even though I've only gone for 12 minutes into this topic, you may have already come up with a lot of questions regarding what I've described. So I'm going to read from the Warrior Care and Transition website here, their frequently asked questions, and read their responses to those questions. If you have any other questions that aren't mentioned here, then please send me an email or put them in the comments, something like that, and I'll get the answers for you. So, question number 1. When does the COAD or COAR process begin? The COAD request will go to the Physical Disability Agency after, and I must stress, after the soldier receives the unfit rating and indicates they want to pursue COAD or COAR. In other words, you've got that recommendation for separation, and if you haven't accepted it, then you have put in this request for continued service. How long can I stay on COAD or COAR? Once approved for COAD, soldiers or other service members may remain on active duty, provided they're otherwise qualified, or reserve service. Keep that in mind. If I say active duty, I also mean reserve service. They can stay in an active status until their retention control point, that's for enlisted members, mandatory removal date for officers, or mandatory retirement date, or age 60 for Guard and Reserve, whichever of those comes first. So if you're 55 and an officer, but you reach your mandatory removal date, then you will still need to separate at that time. Once approved for continuation on active reserve, soldiers may serve to their maximum years of service or age 60, whichever comes first. They will be required to re-enlist, if enlisted, if the period of service was approved and extends beyond their contractual enlistment as it currently stands. Am I still competitive for promotion? The answer to that is yes. Again, we're talking Army here. You are eligible for promotion and you still are competitive against others in your MOS. AR 600-8-19 and the Warrior Care Transition Unit Consolidated Guidance govern promotion rules, policy, procedures, all that good stuff. And I have a link, again, in the article version of this and in the description for this episode. So who is the authority for approving or disapproving these requests? In the case of the Army, it's the Army Deputy Chief of Staff, or G1, located at Human Resources Command. Will I remain in the same military occupational specialty, or MOS, while I am in COAD or COAR? And most soldiers will remain in their current MOS, and they'll be assigned according to their limitations. So if you're, let's just say, a personnelist, and you're currently assigned to an infantry unit, you might be reassigned to a headquarters unit so that you can better be accommodated by their work situation and not have your disability stressed more by being in these faster-paced units. Can I revoke or withdraw my application? The answer to that is yes. A soldier may request to revoke or withdraw the application through their PEBLO if they choose to do so. Now, obviously, when you take a look at these frequently asked questions, you'll notice I'm not reading these verbatim. I'm just paraphrasing as I go. Can I re-enlist while in COAD or COAR? And again, as I covered that earlier, the answer is yes. Soldiers are not required to meet medical standards for disabilities for which they were continued, and they are allowed to re-enlist. However, they may be denied re-enlistment if their disabilities have worsened or if they develop new medical impairments which fall below medical retention standards of Army Regulation 40-501, Chapter 3. All right, enough of that reading. That, even as the host of this show, doing a whole bunch of flat reading gets dull and can limit my ability to at least sound like I'm interested in what I'm talking about, because you can get the Ben Stein clear eyes, you can get that monotone, which sounds very much like you're just going through the motions and don't care what you're saying. That's certainly not the case here. Now, as I said, this isn't a program for everyone, but it can be a useful tool for those who wish to continue service, and if you're approved, then by golly, go for it. So hopefully that gives you an idea that there are still options available to you once you have your disability ratings and your separation recommendation. You don't necessarily have to leave. In some cases, it might be best if you did, but again, that's for you to decide. Again, if you have any questions about what I have covered today, then please drop a comment or an email to me, and I will get an answer to you post-haste. All right, that's all I have for you today. As always, I do thank you for joining me today and being a part of this audience. If you believe this is useful information, then please hit that like button down at the bottom of the video, or if you're listening to the podcast, then share this episode with others. Do the same on YouTube. Share these episodes. Write reviews about them. Leave comments and recommend them to friends. Anyone you think might be able to benefit from this knowledge. In fact, especially in the podcast version, writing reviews in iTunes is quite beneficial and helps get a higher rating in searches so that others can find the podcast. Comments also are searchable on YouTube. Did you know that? So if you leave comments and questions, then that will help others find this episode and also benefit from it. All right, enough of my rambling. So again, thank you for joining me. Thank you for being a part of this audience. Thank you for your service, as always. And I hope that you can benefit from this information and either as a result of it or just natural circumstances, have a great day. Thank you very much. If you liked what you heard on today's episode, then please go below and give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to this channel. Also, please let other people know about this channel and the information it can provide for them. If you have questions or comments, then please have no qualms about posting them in the comments section below. Please remember the RC Retirement YouTube channel and the RC Retirement website are not recognized or endorsed by the Department of Defense, the Department of Veterans Affairs, or any other government agency. The information presented in these resources are for entertainment and informational purposes only. Also, the content of either of these resources should not be considered financial or legal advice. Please consult with your own legal counsel, accountant, or financial planner before making any decisions based on what you have learned here. As always, thank you for watching the RC Retirement YouTube channel.